was never very religious. I was raised Catholic, yes. Mass every Sunday with my Polish family in Jersey City. But as I grew older, I drifted away. Church felt full of rules, judgments, people telling you who you should be. I built my empire without praying. I survived prison without asking for divine help. I rebuilt everything with my own hands. I believed in hard work, not miracles. But there was one day, one specific day, when all of that changed. It wasn't dramatic. There were no voices from heaven, no mystical visions. It was something more subtle, more profound, something that only happens when you finally stop fighting and simply listen. Today, I'm going to tell you that story. The story of the day my garden became my church. And the sign I received, it wasn't what I expected to see. Before we begin, tell me, where do you find peace? Leave it in the comments. Subscribe to this channel. I want to know where you find meaning. Now, let me tell you what happened. It was spring of 2015. I was 73 years old. It had been 2 years since my cardiac event, 2 years since I woke up in a hospital unable to breathe, 2 years since life nearly took me. Since then, I had changed. I was working fewer hours, sleeping more, delegating more, saying no to things that weren't essential. On the surface, everything was better, more balanced, more healthy. My empire was still thriving. My health had recovered. I had proven once again that I was capable of rebuilding, but inside, something was still missing. It wasn't about work. It wasn't about health. It wasn't about productivity. It was something deeper, of a hunger that no change in habits could satisfy. I started asking myself, I changed my routine, but did I change my soul? I found myself waking up in the middle of the night, staring at the ceiling, wondering, is there something beyond all of this? Is there a greater purpose? I had everything I'd always wanted: success, recovered health, security, but I lacked connection, meaning something that went beyond myself. And that's when I started going to my garden in the early morning hours, not to work, not to plan the landscaping, but simply to be. One morning I woke at 5 a.m. with a strange feeling. Not anxiety, not fear, a kind of calling. I went down to my garden. The sun hadn't fully risen yet. There was mist between the trees. The birds were just beginning to sing, and I sat there. On the stone bench I've had for years, alone, in silence, no phone, no agenda, no purpose other than being there, and something in me shifted. Now, before we go further, I want to hear from you. If you have a special place where you seek peace, a place where you feel connected to something larger, drop a comment and just type the word garden. I want to see how many of us are out there. And subscribe to this channel, because what I'm about to share with you might change how you see everything. In the following days, I kept going to the garden in the early morning hours. At first, my mind wouldn't stop. To-do lists, worries, plans always moving. But gradually, something began to change. I started noticing things I'd never paid attention to before. The way morning light touched the rose petals, the specific sound the wind makes when it passes through the oak leaves, the way bees move, with purpose, without hurry. There was an order there, a rhythm, something that worked perfectly without my interference. The flowers didn't need my approval to bloom. The birds didn't need my command to sing. The earth didn't wait for my permission to grow. Everything simply was. And in that silence, in that observation, Something inside me began to loosen. My entire life, I had controlled everything, planned everything, built everything through sheer willpower. But there, in the garden, I wasn't in control of anything. And for the first time in decades, that didn't scare me. It was liberating. I wasn't trying to fix anything. I wasn't trying to improve anything. I wasn't trying to achieve anything. I was just there, present, breathing, watching. And in that simplicity, there was something sacred I realized I had spent my whole life doing, building, achieving, proving. But I had forgotten how to simply be, how to exist without purpose, how to be present without agenda. The garden didn't ask anything of me. It didn't need me to be successful or productive or perfect. It just allowed me to be there. And in that allowance, I found something I'd been searching for my entire life: acceptance, not from others, but from existence itself. One morning, sitting there as the sun rose, I asked a question out loud. I don't know why I spoke aloud. There was no one there. But the words came out. What is all of this? Why am I here? What's the point? I wasn't asking God, at least not consciously. I was just asking to the universe, to life, to myself. And then it happened. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't a vision. It was something more subtle. It was as if suddenly I could see beyond the surface of things. I looked at that rose that was beginning to bloom, and I realized it wasn't trying to be a peony. It wasn't comparing itself to other flowers. It was just being what it was, completely, perfectly. And in that moment, I understood something that changed everything. My entire life, I had been trying to prove my worth, build things, achieve more, be more. But that rose didn't need to prove anything. It simply existed. And its existence was enough, was sacred. And what if my existence was enough too? What if I didn't need to build anything more, achieve anything more, prove anything more? What if I could simply be? The tears came before I expected them. Not tears of sadness, tears of relief. Because for the first time in my life, I understood I don't need to earn my place in this world. I already have it. Simply by being here, simply by existing, I am part of this garden, part of this earth, part of this vast, mysterious web of life. Not because of what I've built, not because of what I've achieved, but simply because I am. The sign I received that day wasn't external. It was internal. It was a deep understanding, so clear it seemed impossible I hadn't seen it before. I was connected to everything. I always had been. To that rose, to that earth, to that sun, to those bees, to every person who had ever crossed my path, to every moment I had ever lived. I wasn't alone. I never had been. There was something larger holding me, sustaining me. Not a God who judges or demands, but a force, a presence, an invisible web of connection that held everything together, and I was part of it. Not Martha Stewart, the brand, not Martha Stewart, the businesswoman, just Martha, a living being, breathing, existing, connected. I sat there for what felt like hours, but might have been minutes, just feeling it, this connection, this belonging. I had spent my entire life trying to prove I belonged somewhere in the world of business, in the media, in high society, always trying to earn my place, always trying to be worthy. But I had been looking in the wrong places because my belonging wasn't something I needed to earn. It was already there. It had always been there. I belonged to this earth, to this life, to this existence, not because I was successful or accomplished or perfect, but simply because I was alive. That garden in that moment became my church, not because it was sacred in some special way, but because I was finally present enough to recognize the sacred that had always been there. The sacred isn't in buildings or institutions or rituals. The sacred is in presence, in connection, in simply being alive and aware. And when you're quiet enough, still enough, present enough, you can feel it everywhere. I can't say everything changed instantly. I still work. I still build. I still have ambitions and plans. But something fundamental shifted inside me. I'm no longer trying to fill a void, because I realize there is no void. There never was. There was always fullness. I was just too busy to notice. Now when I wake up, the first thing I do is give thanks, not to a specific God, but to life, to the chance to be here one more day when I see something beautiful, a flower, a sunset, a kind face. I stop. I really stop. And I acknowledge this is sacred. When I'm with someone, I try to be truly present, not planning the next meeting or thinking about the next project, but there, in that moment, in that connection, because that's the real church, not a building, not an institution, but these moments of presence, of connection, of recognizing the sacred in the ordinary. My garden taught me that, or rather reminded me of it, because deep down I always knew. We all know. We just need to be quiet enough to remember. I go to my garden differently now, not to work on it, not to improve it, not to photograph it for a magazine spread, but to simply be in it, to witness the cycles, the seasons, the life and death and rebirth that happens constantly, to remember that I'm part of those cycles too, that I don't need to control everything, I don't need to perfect everything, I don't need to achieve everything, I just need to be here, fully here, alive, aware, connected, and that is enough, more than enough. That is everything. Today, at 83 years old, I still go to my garden every morning, not because I have to, but because I want to, because there in that space, I remember who I really am, not what I've built, not what I've achieved, but who I am underneath all of that, a human being, connected to everything, part of something larger, and that is enough. If you're searching for meaning, if you're feeling empty even with success, if you're wondering if there's something more, I'm telling you, there is. But you won't find it by building more, achieving more, proving more. You'll find it by stopping, being quiet, being present. It could be in a garden. It could be on a walk. It could be sitting in your living room. The place doesn't matter. What matters is presence, quietude, openness to see what has always been there. I spent decades building an empire, but the most valuable thing I ever found, I found in silence, in stillness, in my garden on an ordinary morning. That connection, that belonging, that recognition of the sacred in the simple act of being alive. That's what I was searching for all along. And it was never in achievement or recognition or success. It was always right here, in this breath, in this moment, in this existence. The sign I received wasn't external. It was the recognition of what was already true, that I am enough, that I belong, that I am connected to everything, not because of what I've done, but because I am. And so are you. You are enough, you belong. You are connected, not because of what you achieve or produce or accomplish, but simply because you are here, because you exist, because you are alive. That is the sign. That is the truth. That is the sacred. And when you're quiet enough, still enough, present enough. You'll see it too. Now I want to hear from you. Where do you find your sacred? What is your church? Leave it in the comments and subscribe to this channel, because while I still can, I'll keep sharing these reflections with you. Thank you for being here with me today. Thank you for listening. And may you find your own garden, your own stillness, your own moment of recognition. You are enough. You are connected. You are sacred, just as you are, right now